Consider something strange with me. There is a danger in becoming stronger, because sometimes when we overcome a piece of ourselves, when we rise from the pit, the ego quietly follows. It puts on the armor of confidence. It borrows the language of wisdom. It convinces us that because we have grown, we are now above correction. But the Stoics would warn us, strength without humility becomes another form of slavery. Because the goal was never to become untouchable. The goal was to become teachable, clear-minded, and useful. For the Stoics, humility was not weakness. It was accurate vision. It was the discipline of remembering that you do not control everything, that you do not know everything, and that your reputation is smaller than your character, and your life is shorter than your pride wants to admit. Welcome back, my fellow stranger, to another episode, Traversing the Strange World, and I'm your host, Isaiah Danbury. You're listening to another Monday Mornings with Peace. And today, we are looking at 3 Stoic mantras for humility. 3 reminders from a philosophy built for emperors, slaves, and anyone trying to live with more wisdom than ego. Because maybe humility is not lowering yourself. Maybe humility is finally seeing yourself clearly. But real quick, before we get started, if you would kindly hit like and subscribe, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. And the first Stoic mantra for humility comes from Epictetus. Epictetus was not born into status. He was actually born into slavery. And later in life, after gaining his freedom, he became one of the great teachers of Stoicism. And that matters because when Epictetus speaks about humility, he is not speaking as someone casually admiring the idea from a distance. He is speaking from a philosophy of survival and inner freedom. One of the quotes most often connected to him says, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he already thinks he knows." And that gives us our first mantra. I cannot grow where I refuse to be taught. This is one of the first doors into Stoicism. Because Stoicism is not simply about being calm. It is not about pretending that nothing hurts you. Stoicism is a philosophy of training the soul. It asks what is actually in my control and what is not in my control. What kind of person am I becoming through the way I respond? For Epictetus, the beginning of wisdom is realizing you are not already wise. The arrogant person cannot be taught. The arrogant person may hear advice, but they do not receive it. They may encounter correction, but they only experience it as insult. They may meet wisdom, but if it threatens their self-image, they reject it. We have all done this. Someone points something out in us, and we don't even ask whether it is true. We defend ourselves. We build the argument. We protect our image. We try to win the moment rather than learning from it. Epictetus would say that is where we lose our freedom. Because if my ego decides what I'm allowed to hear, then I'm not free. I only can be corrected by people who flatter me first. Then I'm not free. The Stoic path begins with a different posture. It begins with the ability to say, maybe I do not see this clearly yet. Maybe I still have something to learn. Maybe this correction is not an attack. Maybe this is training. The person who believes they already know everything has quietly locked the door to becoming anything more. And our second Stoic mantra for humility comes from Marcus Aurelius. Marcus is one of the most fascinating figures in Stoicism. He was not writing as a monk hidden away from the world, as we mentioned in previous episodes. He was the emperor of Rome. He had wealth, status, servants, authority, and the kind of power that most human egos could barely survive. And yet, in his private journal, the book we now call the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Marcus constantly speaks to himself like a man trying not to be conquered by his own pride. Because for Marcus, Stoicism was not just a set of ideas. It was self-discipline under pressure. It was a ruler reminding himself that power does not make you wise, status does not make you right, and being praised does not make you good. And one of his most powerful reminders is this. He said, if anybody can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from a wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. And that gives us our second mantra. The truth is greater than my ego. This is one of the clearest Stoic angles of humility. Because humility is not just about being soft-spoken. It's not just about being modest with personality. People can look humble on the outside and still be completely enslaved to pride on the inside. Real humility is tested when correction arrives. When someone shows you that you were wrong. When a better argument appears. When your first reaction is embarrassment, defensiveness, or anger. Are you serving the truth or are you serving your image? Marcus Aurelius understood that the ego is always tempted to protect itself. It wants to win the argument. It wants to preserve the appearance of control. It wants to look wise more than it wants to become wise. The Stoic asks, what is true, what is just, and what is reasonable? What kind of person am I becoming if I refuse to admit when I am wrong? Marcus was an emperor, but he still reminded himself to be corrected. He had the power to silence people, but he trained himself to listen for truth. And that is the standard. Every one of us has a small empire inside of us, an inner throne where the ego wants to sit. And Stoicism asks us to remove the ego from that throne and to let reason sit there. So the second mantra is this: the truth is greater than my ego. And the third Stoic mantra for humility brings us back to Marcus Aurelius. And this is where Stoicism becomes almost cosmic. Marcus was emperor of Rome, but in meditations, he is constantly trying to shrink down his ego back to its proper size. He reminds himself to look at life from above, to look at the earth, the stars, the generations before him, and the generations after him, and to remember how small one human life really is. And one of his reminders says, consider the whole universe of matter and how small your share. And that gives us our third mantra. Remember death and return to what matters. This is the Stoic practice of memento mori. Remember death, not because the Stoics wanted us to be dark or hopeless, but because they wanted us to see life more clearly. Death is the great humbler. It humbles kings and beggars. It humbles the praised and the forgotten, no matter how important the ego feels. In this moment, memento mori whispers, you are passing through. And strangely, that can be a little freeing. Because if I remember that I am mortal, I don't have to win every argument. I do not have to protect every piece of my pride. I don't have to spend my own short life worshipping my own reputation. The Stoic angle of humility is not, you are nothing, so nothing matters. It's actually the opposite. It is, you are temporary, so live like what matters actually matters. Your character matters. Your love matters. And your discipline matters. But your ego is not worth building a life around. Marcus Aurelius had more reason than most to believe he was important. Ruled an empire. His face was on coins, and his decisions shaped history. And yet he reminded himself that one day he too would be gone. His power would pass. His body would return to the earth, and his name would become a memory. Stoic humility does not ask us to hate ourselves. It asks to put ourselves in our own place, correctly. You are not the center of the universe. You are not above correction, and you are not here forever. You are here now, and while you are here, you can choose wisdom over pride. You can choose service over vanity. The third mantra is this: remember death and return to what matters. Because one day, the applause will fade, the arguments will end, the image will disappear, and the body will be handed back to the earth. What will remain is the question the Stoics always place before us. Did you live with virtue while you had the chance? So that being said, tonight when we go to bed, before we close our eyes, let us ask ourselves, let us do this meditation on our own death. Pretend today was our last day. Are we satisfied with the character that we played in this drama called life? And I'm going to end it with that. But before you go, I'm going to ask you one more time to go ahead and hit like and subscribe. And if you heard anything that resonated with you here, leave a little comment. It would be greatly appreciated. Alright, until next time, my fellow stranger, let us keep traversing this strange world. Let us remember always to be inquisitive. Let us remember to always be introspective. And let's remember always to be neighborly to folks, because we are just kind of cast into this whole life thing. A life that we don't know a lot about. So at the end of the day, we're just strangers in a strange land. Until next time, peace.